Hello all, welcome to R&D Labs with me Rohan, and today we are going to see how to send a post request using Alamofire Library in your Swift project. This video is a series of tutorials that we are going to cover in which we are going to explore the Alamofire Library and how it can be used in your Swift project. So make sure that you are not missing any updates just by subscribing and hitting the notification button so that you're notified next time a video comes in. In the previous tutorial, we had covered how to send a GET request using parameters. And in this tutorial, we are just going to see how to send a post request using Alamofire Library. So how do we do it? Let's get started. So for this tutorial, we are going to continue where we left off in the previous tutorial, in which we had queried a get method using parameters with Alamofire Library. So I will highly recommend, in case if you have just joined in from this tutorial onwards and are curious to know what we have covered in the past in the Alamofire series, please do check those videos out. I have added the link of those videos in the description box below. So in this project, I have already imported the Alamofire library using CocoaPods. And what we're going to do is, for this tutorial, we are going to query the http bin.org, which is the open source network, and the URL checker. And then we are going to pass a post request to it. So let me just show you what the http bin.org is all about. And I will open this up for you. So let me just maximize this. All right. So over here we have a section called as HTTP methods, and if I just open that, we have a post request right up here. So if you click that, you will need to select, or you need to click the try it out button for you to execute the request, and you can see the URL that you need to pass for the post request, which is http bin.org/post. And we will also see how the response body will be shown in your application, and we will also see how the response time will be, the size of the request, and also let's not forget the response code. Similar to what we had seen in the tutorial where we had covered the get request, we will also see how to get the response code, okay, how to query the response code in your application. So let's head back to our Swift project, and here we will have to add a button so that you can trigger the action for the post request. So I'll just collapse this, and I will add a button over here for post request. Okay, and let me just drag and create an action for it. Okay, so it should be post request. Okay, so as you have seen earlier, the post request has a URL as http bin.org/post. So for this, we will have to create a variable of type string and assign the value of this URL to it. So let's create var surl string, and surl is equal to https bin.org/post. Okay, so you have set the post URL to the variable. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to create a variable of type data response serializer and pass the success codes. For this tutorial, we are going to just use three success codes, which are 200, 204, and 205. Okay, so let's create that variable first. So let serializer is equal to data response serializer. Yeah, this one. And empty response codes set. Okay, and we will have to pass three error codes, so which are 200, 204, and 205. There are many success response codes which are available. I can just show it up for you, which are right here. So as you can see, this is an entire bunch of the response codes. I'll just maximize the web page just so that you can see it. Yeah, so this is an entire bunch of successful response code. But for our tutorial and for the sake of your understanding, we are just going to restrict our response codes to only 3, which are 200, 204, and 205. All right, so next let's head back to our project, and we will have to create a sample request variable which is of type URL request. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create var sample request is equal to URL request. So let's write URL colon and should be URL, and we'll have to pass the SURL variable. So we will have to first set it as string and write SURL, and that's it. Okay, so next what we're going to do is very important step over here. By default, any request that you're sending, if it is not explicitly mentioned as post, is always get. Does that make sense? Which also means that by default, any request that you send is a get request. Okay, so if you want to specify the request as post, you will have to specify the HTTP method to it. Okay, so we will have to send, or we will have to set the HTTP method to sample request first. Okay, so let's write sample request is equal to, this one is equal dot HTTP method is equal to HTTP method dot post. This is a one. Okay, and since it should be string, I will write as raw value. All right, so you can also do this as a get. Okay, but if you are passing get request to a get URL, you can use get. But by default, any request that you send to a URL, to a web service URL, will always be get unless it is explicitly mentioned as post or anything apart from get. Okay, so I will write as post dot raw value. Okay, so we have mentioned the HTTP method as post. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to send this request to Alamofire. Okay, so let's write what happened. Okay, right here. So AF dot request. Okay, and I'm going to set a sample request which we have built here. Okay, so this variable we are passing it to Alamofire within request. Okay, and we have to write upload progress and progress in. So let's provide a closure to it. And over here, see, there are various methods for sending a request to Alamofire, but the way in which upload progress works is, in case if you want to add a wait cursor or some kind of an activity monitor just to see or monitor how your request has been sent to the server, I always recommend you guys to add the upload progress to your Alamofire request. Okay, and if you do that, you get a response back. Okay, so you are sending a request to Alamofire, after which you're going to get a response back. Okay, so let's write a response. Okay, and response serializer. Okay, and over here we have to pass in the serializer that we had declared earlier. Okay, so we have the serializer variable, so the same serializer variable we have to pass to the response serializer. Okay, and we will have to add the response as well. So let's write a response in, and that's it. You have a request sent and you get a response back. Okay, so now we will have to kind of parse what the response is. As I told you earlier, we are going to get the response, we are going to parse it, we are going to see the size of the response, we are also going to see the time taken for the response to come back to you, and also we are going to see the status code. So let's do that one by one. So first let us check if the response has got any errors or not. Okay, so let's write response dot error is equal to nil. Okay, which means there is no error in the response. Okay, so we can proceed ahead to just parse the response now. Okay, so let's write var response string. Okay, so we'll create a variable to kind of get the response or store the response. Okay, so response string. Okay, and the type of that variable is string as well, and let's initialize this variable response string to be empty. Okay, and so next what we're going to do is we are going to check, or we are going to see whether the data property of the response is nil or not. Okay, so we have declared a variable called as response string, and we are going to store the value of the data property into the response string. Okay, so let's check whether the data property is nil or not. So response dot data is not equal to nil. Sorry, I always write NILL, I don't know why. Okay, so let's write response string is equal to, let's typecast that from string, and we have bytes bits response dot data, and we will add the value of response data to response string. Okay, so we will specify the encoding as well, which is .utf8. Okay, so what we've done here is we have got the response data, and which we are converting or typecasting it to string and setting it to response string. Okay, so you have the response here. If it is not equal to nil, then what you do is, else we will have to set as response string is equal to response dot response, and we will have to add the description to it. Okay, so we will fall back upon just to get what response we are getting it from the URL. Okay, so we are just going to show whatever we get as a response back. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to see how the response looks like. Aren't you interested to know that? So we will write a print statement, and we will just write response to it, and just leave it just like that. I'll pass in the optional as well, just in case if we don't get any response. All right, so this looks okay to me, and I'll just bring up my console. Here you go. Okay, I will build this and see if I have any errors here. All right, so let's run this on a simulator. I have iPhone 11 Pro Max already assigned as simulator, so let's run this on it. All right, so we have a post request button already shown up that we have added from our view controller in the storyboard, and we'll just click that and see what we have in the output window. Let me just maximize this, and over here, as you can see, we have a response back. So we have the URL here, and which we have specified in the variable. Okay, and as you can see, till now we haven't got any response code yet. Okay, so let us go ahead and check what is the response code. Okay, so The web service is working from HTTP bin, and we are actually getting a response for the post method. Okay, so let's go down and add our response code statement as well. It's very simple. We are just going to write another print statement, and let's pass response dot response, and we have a status code variable or property. Okay, so we are just going to stop the simulator first, and we are going to build this, and let's wait for a while, and I will run this on a simulator again. Okay, let's execute it. There you go. So you have a status code as 200. Fair. What if I want to know what is the other status code available? Or maybe let's play around with the URL. Let's pass in a wrong URL, and I will stop this or run this again and see what happens. Okay, so just remember, we are just going to execute this with the wrong URL, and we get error 404. Okay, which means it is, do we have it here? Let me just check. Error 404, which is not found. So you have a description which says the resource was not found at the URL given. Okay, so which is again F404, which is not found. So similar response has been returned back from the http bin.org web service as well. Next, we'll just correct back the URL. And what we will do next is we are going to get the length. Okay, so we will see what is the length of the response. Okay, so let's write another print statement. Okay, now before doing that, we will first create a variable of type NSData. Okay, and then we will try to get the length out of NSData. Okay, so let's write var, and we'll say response data, and we'll set it up as NSData over here, and say response data is equal to response dot data as NSData. Okay, so we have set the value or the data variable to response data, after which we have to get the length of the data. Okay, so how do you get the length of NSData? We will see that. Okay, so var I data length is equal to response data dot length. Fair. So we have this variable of type NSData, and we wanted to get the length of it. Okay, so we have used the length property, and we will be then storing this in a variable to show it to you. So what we will do next, we will say print, okay, and we will specify this as size in bytes. Okay, so let's write it like I data length. Okay, and just add bytes to it. Okay, so this entire process is called string interpolation, and we will be using it within the print statement. Okay, along with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another print statement to get the response time. Okay, and let us do that as well so that we can see both together in action. So let's write print, and we will just write response time. Okay, and again we will use string interpolation. Oops, what is this? Spotlight quit unexpectedly. Okay, I don't care about this. Okay, so let's write response dot net process. Okay, and we will specify dot task interval dot duration. Okay, and we will specify an optional value as 0. So this is in seconds, so I will just add seconds to it so that the user knows what unit it is. So if you want to have this in milliseconds, you can multiply the entire block, which is until duration, into 1000. Okay, so I will just stop this here first and we will run this in a simulator. All right, let's run this. Great. So what we have here is the status code is back to 200. We have the size as 515 bytes. We have the response time as 1 second and close, like kind of above 1 second, a fraction above 1 second. So if you want a very, what do you say, accurate time, so I would recommend you to add it in milliseconds. So this is how you query a post URL using Alamofire Library in your Swift project. I hope you like this video. If you have any doubts, please reach me out in the comment section. I'll be happy to help. And also in the coming tutorials, we'll be covering how to send a post request with parameters. So make sure that you're subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification button so that you're notified next time a video comes in. See you until then. Cheers.